I'm Steve Lentini, Lord and Lentini, and Southwestern Consulting. So let me tell you first, let's jump into what the topics are, what I intend to cover. And at the end, maybe you'll leave with something that can help you, and that's my goal. But first, let's go to the topics. Sound good? All right. Top producers, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how you can download the Ultimate Closing Guide and how that's really helpful with some great ideas. And if you use my discount code SLENTINI10, SLENTINI 10, you get 10% off. And it's only $99 to begin with. All right, so first, we'll go back to the habits of top producers. Top producers don't tell themselves a BS story. That's my new book, No BS Coaching. Wake up from the BS you tell yourself. And they have a myriad of ways to check in on their brain when their brain starts to tell them a story about a client, about a customer, about picking up the phone to talk to someone new, about asking for referrals, about a boss, about a company. It's human. We all tell ourselves a story somewhere, and we need someone to help us check in on it. Because as Dr. James Doty says in his book, Mind Magic, now it's a fascinating book, but I'm going to give you a very short cliff note. He said the brain, think of it this way, picture 100% of your brain, 10% of it is what you use daily to meet your calendar demands, your task list, to drive, all the things we do that we have control over. The remaining 90%, think of it this way, he says. 10% is unconscious. So for some of us, not me, obviously, it's growing hair and nails. That works for me. Growing nails, circulation, your heart beating, your eyes watering, blinking, all the things you don't think of. You never have to worry about it. You don't think about digesting your meal. That's the unconscious. The remaining 45%, the other half of that remaining 90%, is the subconscious. And the subconscious, Dr. James Doty says, and I love this, he says, think of it as two systems. The file system, which is what you put in the file system, and the bloodhound. Whatever you put in the file system, the bloodhound goes off gathering evidence to prove it's true. Despite any evidence to the contrary. And that gets in the way of top producers because that means you're closed-minded. You're only looking for proof that you're right. And that makes everyone around you wrong or the circumstances wrong. And then your brain loves that because the bloodhound says, aha, you're right. Top producers have a coach that can help them break through self-limiting barriers. And self-limiting barriers are the BS story that you tell yourself. When the company gives you a 40% increase goal, or when you set a big goal, the brain says, who, you? And what happens with that thought when you put it in the file system, when you believe the brain looks at everything that occurs that doesn't match your picture as proof that you are not capable. So top producers manage their mind. And there's a myriad of tools to do that today. Emotional Intelligence Habits is a great book. I flag it and I share it with my clients by Dr. Travis Bradberry. He wrote Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and he's got this new follow-up book, which is a great book. The thing about this book is he says, first go through the table of contents and pick the chapters that you know you need to work on and only focus on those. You don't have to read the book cover to cover. I love books like that. That's why you can see that I flagged it. That's what I do. And I share that content, what I'm working on, and I share that content with others. That's what I do in my coaching practice. Now, I'm not selling coaching. That's not what I'm doing. I'm encouraging you to get a coach. And we have lots of coaches at Southwestern Consulting, so it doesn't have to be me, but we have a lot of trained people, certified people who've experienced many different facets of business, their own success, their own blocks, their own self talk that they have to manage, and they can help with it. And then there's plenty of other coaches throughout the world, right, that can help you. So, top producers manage their mind. I'm a PQ certified coach, and the PQ program is backed by research at Stanford University that Shirzad Chamine did, and he wrote the book Positive Intelligence. The PQ program talks about what I call the acorn brain, right? The small-minded thinker. You can see it on my logo. That's my shirt, right? That's the logo, the acorn brain. The reason I call it the acorn brain, that's that little voice, that small-minded thinker that finds limits. That's all it does, is find limits. It's not limitless thinking. So Shirzad talks about the 9 subsets of the acorn brain. He calls it the judge. And those 9 subsets, you can do an assessment for free. If you're interested, email me and I'll send you the link to the assessment. Don't sign up for the program right away because I can coach you through that. If you buy a coaching program, I include it in the coaching program. But take the assessment and you'll find how fascinating those saboteurs are. He breaks them down to things like, for me, it's hyperachiever, which is wonderful, right? It's good until it's not. It's good until it's not. The hyperachiever in me drives me to continue to do different things, take risks, try different things. It goes negative when it has me doing too many things, when I lose control and focus of what's really important in the moment. Now I've taken on way too much. The next voice that's high for me is the restless voice. So then is no matter how much I'm doing, which the hyperachiever got me into, the restless says it's not enough. Now I've published 9 books. I have a 10th coming out in September. I have a few more scheduled for next year. Years ago, that wouldn't have been enough for the hyperachiever and then the restless. So I'm not going to go into all the 9 saboteurs, but top producers are emotionally intelligent and they find different programs to help expand them. Because emotional intelligence, or EQ, unlike IQ, can grow throughout your life. IQ, by the way, is pretty much static. Now, if you're a genius, a lot of geniuses are not very self-aware. We've all met people who are very bright, but they're not socially aware. And some very smart people look for comfort. They're not taking risks. They can't wait for tenure, for example, in the case of professors. I had a PhD share a joke where he was talking about a worm has been discovered, or a sea creature has been discovered, that once it's born, it goes searching for an anchor, a place to make home. Once it finds home, it actually digests its brain and its eyes. And what works from there is just it filters the nutrients it needs from its home and the surrounding seawater. It finds home and gets comfortable, and that's it. It latches on, and it eats its eyes and its brain. Then he goes on to say, much like tenured professors. Now, that's a joke. So if you're a professor, you're probably not on this anyway, because you might be telling people how to think instead of what to think. That's my joke. Top producers are always looking at what they're thinking. They're not working on how to think. That's not their job. In a universe, by the way, how is not our job. And that's what people forget. We live in something limitless. I call it a miracle or a universe. We're floating around on a little ball in the middle of nothing, a void, a vacuum. And I sometimes use a marble with the world painted on it to just remind me how small we are. And scientists have said we're probably no larger than a grain of sand in respect to the size of the universe. Can you imagine that? And yet we think we're so important that we don't have an open mind, and we're not working on what to think and what we're thinking and whether it's true or not. And I can tell you, most of those saboteur voices, when they're very loud, they lie. In fact, when they're loud, they're lying, all of them. The PQ program can help you lower the volume of that voice, and it's another way to manage self-limiting thinking. It's going to the neuro gym. Most people get going to the physical gym, and if they haven't in a while and they go, their muscles ache. Well, when you start going to the neuro gym, your brain will ache, and it will look like this, or it will sound like this, or it'll feel like this. You don't need this stuff. You know better. The mind wants to run you, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years, probably since we started to evolve from caveman days. Caveman days, it's in our DNA. We needed to believe the brain because it was instinctual mostly back then. If you went out hunting for food to provide for yourself or your family and you left the cave, you had to be very aware because something might eat you. And so it was very instinctual. We don't need that today. And yet neuroscientists, Joe Dispenza, Dr. Shirzad Chamine, Dr. James Doty, Srikumar Rao, Dr. Srikumar Rao, Dr. Roland Alexander, there's lots of work today. Marshall Goldsmith talks about it. William Ury talks about it. That we can let the mind run us, or we can run it. And it's about learning how to do that. And that takes a routine that you do daily. Now, I don't want to scare you because it's only a few minutes a day, a few minutes in the morning. Maybe you remember it at lunchtime to do it again, and maybe at dinner, or maybe before you close your eyes. And part of that is to think every day about what you're grateful for. And then there's other things you can do, going to the neuro gym to train your mind. Rainer Maria Rilke in the 1800s called that voice. Do you want that little hooligan to run you, or do you want to run it? George Ivanovich Gurdjieff in the early 1900s called it the machine. Do you want the machine to run you, or will you run the machine? Now, the good news is you can probably get to 60, 65, 70% if you're disciplined and committed. If you're willing, you'll lower that voice. It won't ever go away. It's not a destination. I've got a couple of quotes I want to read you from something I email people that are interested in my coaching programs, and a couple of them are interesting to me. And it'll support me here in this live presentation. John Whitmore said, coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. What I say to people is never follow anyone or anything blindly. Prove it to yourself. You're making your life an experiment. Top producers do that. They make their life an experiment. They keep risking and making themselves uncomfortable, going into uncharted territory, putting out new behavior and receiving the feedback about it. And once they prove something works, they own it. They don't need anybody else to convince them. I tell all my clients, if I ever tell you I found the way, run away. Call me back in a few weeks, I say, because see if I've regained my sanity or pulled my head out of a dark spot, if you know what I mean. Here's something Viktor Frankl said. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to create. Viktor Frankl, he thought of that when he was in Auschwitz, and he survived. Many didn't, as you know. Millions didn't. What he's talking about in that space, if we react, which is between stimulus and response, if we take a break, there's a space. If we recognize it, we can choose something new. I hyphenate reenact because it's something previously learned. A reaction is an old behavior that you are continuing to do. It's like you learned a script for a movie and you keep replaying that same scene over and over again. And I'm going to tell you why. Neuro researchers have found that up until the time we're 35, the subconscious retains all your emotional responses and reactions. And then it takes over, much like driving. When you first learned to drive, you might have been a little nervous. Eventually, you mastered it, and you just drive. And I can tell you, at least for me, this is true, that every once in a while I'm on the highway and think, wait, who just drove those last few miles? I maintained my distance. I didn't miss my exit. But I wasn't in the same awareness that I was previously, right? I had caught that, like who just drove. That same thing can happen to you with emotional responses because your brain says, we know what you do with these kind of people or in this situation. You give them a piece of your mind. That's a reaction. And if you create a space, which is called a pattern interrupt, if you create a space between your stimulus, that person that's aggravating you, or situations that's aggravating you, you create a space between that and a response, you create something new. That's your power. And then I talk about willingness. Top producers are willing. Here's Niccolo Machiavelli. Here's a quote. If you are willing, you can change your life. When willingness is great, difficulties cannot be great, is what Machiavelli said. Now, one of the last few things about top producers is they're accountable for any mess they've created. And I want you to think this over your messes. Well, if I have the power to create that mess, then I have the power to create what I want more of. So top producers do get caught in regrets, and the brain remembers every humiliation, by the way. It's where the brain has an advantage over you. Every embarrassment, every failure, every place you fell, every error in judgment, every humiliation and embarrassment, the brain remembers. And it'll flash it into your mind at the most bizarre times, driving down the road, getting up in the morning, middle of the day. It'll flash those events for you. But here's what I want you to do. That when you're in regret or a flashback to any apparent mistake or error in judgment, remember that it seemed like a good idea at the time and chuckle at yourself. Chuckle at the mess you created. Top producers remind themselves and catch themselves, oh, wait, this is not what I want more of. And then they celebrate catching themselves. I caught you little judge, little acorn brain. And I have a few other choice words for it. And I suggest you name that little voice. They catch it, they celebrate, and then they ask themselves this: what do I want more of? And they get back to that thinking that matches what they want more of, because your thoughts have a power. Now, when you start managing the brain, believe it or not, and you can do this research because it's up to you to prove it to yourself. fMRIs have shown that mostly negative thinkers have a response in their neocortex on the left side. The neurons light up on the left side. The fascinating thing is, as these people are trained to become more positive, and then fMRIs have been done to follow up with them as they've been training themselves, going to the neuro gym, as I mentioned, neural pathways are created on the right side of the neocortex, where positive experiences and positive thinking are stored. New neural pathways are created, much like stroke victims. Dr. James Doty talks about that. Joe Dispenza talks about that. Shirzad Chamine talks about it. William Ury. There's a lot of people that are talking about it today, and that's for a reason. Because we can change. Humans can change. You can discover your power to create once you become accountable. And then as you get into a practice of managing your self-talk, managing that little voice, not letting it run you, you're creating new neurons, new neural pathways that will help you more automatically default to the positive over time. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. You're going to make your life an experiment. You're going to wake up to the BS stories you tell yourself about your boss, about your company, about your circumstances. None of it's true. Now, could some part of it be true? Yes. But when it's rattling around in your head incessantly, you have enrolled yourself in a BS story. If you're thinking people are out to get you, everything I touch turns to crap. I can't succeed. Who am I to want to write a book? Who am I to have this big goal for success in my company? Maybe I want to be a CEO someday. If your brain is telling you who you, not you, if you hear that voice making you wrong and making others around you wrong, for every they and every name you have, or the company holds me back, write a note. Then rewrite the note. Top producers get this exercise that I give them. They rewrite the note, and for every they and every name and every place they wrote, the company holds me back, the government holds me back, society holds me back, my mother and father held me back. You write the word I. And realize there was a gift in everything that's occurring, because it's moving you. It's life itself being a friend. It's life trying to wake you up to get you out of your own way. And that's when you're stuck in a story, it's victim thinking. It's victim of circumstance. Now, do you want to be a victim of circumstance or a master of circumstances? And that's where you get out of the story you're telling yourself. I've met people that are telling themselves, and me and anyone who will listen, about their parents. They're 50, 60, 70 years old. And they're still telling stories about their parents and how it affected their life. There's a gift somewhere it made them stronger, somewhere they learned to speak up, somewhere they learned that they had self-worth. Maybe they learned how not to be a parent, and they're now treating their children and giving them a different experience. There's a gift in everything because we live in a miracle, and top producers are looking for the gift. And even when they catch themselves in lamenting something that didn't work out, or thinking about the past, or even catching themselves in victim thinking, we all have some of it. If you're going to be honest, as a human, we're all flawed. They get over it and they say, wait, there was a gift in this. There was a gift in that time that I got fired, because without that, I wouldn't have this. Or I learned this, and without that, learning that, I wouldn't have this. There is a gift in everything, and top producers don't get stuck in any kind of victim thinking. No, woe is me thinking. Okay, we went through what I said we'd go through. We went through the habits of top producers. And at the end, I said, well, we'll talk about the ultimate closing guide, how to get it. Sound good? You can email me, slentini, Lentini, S as in Steve, Lentini, at Southwestern Consulting, and I'll send you the QR code. There's also a QR code on the invite to this event. You can capture that QR code, use the discount code SLENTINI10, SLENTINI 10. You'll get 10% off. If you're a top producer, you won't need 10% off on $99. But if you have a team, if you're managing a team of salespeople, this would be good for them. Top producers are also students of the game. They're always learning. I have people that I've met in coaching that the first thing they tell me when I ask them, what's the last book you read, and what are you listening to now, and what are you hoping to get to? You have a list of 10 things you're going to read or listen to? I have had some people tell me, hell, I haven't read anything since college, or I haven't read anything since high school. Okay, students of the game, get over that. That's the first BS story you're telling yourself, that you don't need it. How ludicrous is that? Keep growing. Download the Ultimate Closing Guide. Use the discount code if you want. I want people around me to win. My passion and purpose is to raise the consciousness of humanity and companies, one person and one CEO at a time. Because we're all telling ourselves a BS story. It's available on Amazon, by the way, if you want to buy my book. Go to Amazon, Steve Lentini, No BS Coaching. It's available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. If you want to get on my email list, email me, steve@stevelentini, LENTINI.com. Here, I'll show you on the book, steve@stevelentini.com. Send me your address. I'm going to put you on my email list. Send me your address. I'll mail your book for free. If you go buy a book and you decide to jump in any kind of coaching, I'm going to include the PQ program, my book. I'll give you credit for my book. And you'll have a coaching program that will get you into the neuro gym. And you'll see, if you're willing, if you're committed, because you got to commit to a year for any of my coaching programs. By the way, and I've had people for 21, 22, 23 years, 15 years, 10 years. There's a reason for that. They've made a difference. The thing that I'm most grateful for is I've been there to watch their progress and go along for the ride. All right, I'm grateful you attended today. I'm grateful that there are people willing to learn, and I'm grateful that I get to do this work. And there's a story about how it came, how my passion and purpose was given to me by life. Life gave me a wake-up call. But you'll read that in any of my books. Don't believe any self-limiting thinking. Get moving on disciplining your mind and create. Find your power to create in the middle of all the messes you've created. That's the same power. You created the mess. Now get going and create what you want more of. Thank you.